that I can't even believe it. I know what other people can't believe this stuff because it's so brazen, it's so naked, it's so openly insane and self-destructive, even for the controllers, but they just can't help it because they're on power trips, that we're in a depression. They've now announced they're going to hyperinflate the currency like Weimar Republic or Zimbabwe.
Right.
And I don't think even the listeners of this show, I don't think even I, because we've had it so good so long, realize the type of hell we're entering. But there's two choices, as Ron Paul has said. We either go the way of using this pain to get some freedom back and get up on our hind legs, or we ain't seen nothing yet. These controllers are going to use this to set up even more power and control, and they're doing it right now, Russell. Your comments on this, do you agree with me that we're at a historic crossroads, make it or break it?
I agree with that, and I also have to state that I think it's past. The crossroads have passed, because when you look at our forced diets, you know, anything that has a grain, any grain food isn't good for you. You know, there isn't any food produced in America that's good for you, unless you eat it raw, practically. And you know, I heard your commercial on your that's the place you have the type of places you have to go just to stay healthy in this country. And fortunately, on the reservation, the corporation food people haven't reached us yet, so we can still get some natural foods. But we have government forced agricultural department food put on us every month. High in sodium, high in GMO, high in every poison you can think of.
Well, how diabolical is it that people wake up to aspartame the last 10 years, people stop buying it, so even Coke's offering Coke Zero and other alternatives, and now go to a grocery store, 99% of the gum, most of the time I can't even find it, that sugar for children has aspartame in it. I mean, I know I talked about this earlier, but think about the cold-bloodedness. They know this gives them cancer.
They know. That's what gets me. And these are the corporate criminals that never are charged with anything. It's, and the American, I keep going back to the irresponsibility of the American people, because that is the very first rule of freedom. You are free to be responsible. You cannot have freedom unless you're responsible. And to allow yourself to be poisoned, to allow your children to be stolen, allow the incarceration of innocent.
Well, we lost his phone line. I wonder if somebody's fiddling with it. They admit this guy's under federal surveillance constantly. We'll get Russell Means back on. Boy, you hear the media call him a liberal, a commie. He's the opposite of that. He's a libertarian. Barely lost out to Ron Paul running for Libertarian president way back in the 80s. And that's why they hate Russell Means. He's Alex Jones, but before Alex Jones was born. And because he studied it. I mean, you go do the research. It doesn't matter if you're a white guy or a Native American or black or Asian or whatever you are. I mean, you're a human being. And what we're facing is real. Every time he's on, the phone lines do this. I mean, I remember the last two interviews with Russell Means, this kind of chicanery was going on. So we'll continue with him. We can get him back on the line. One time, the phones went dead. Russell, remember that one time you were on and the phones went dead for like 15 minutes?
Exactly, and it happened again. All the power to my house was cut off. It's amazing. You still there?
Yes, sir. I'm there.
Yeah, it's diabolical. I'm just fed up with it.
What was it you were saying when they cut you off?
Well, I was talking about how the American people are not free to be responsible, and that's the very first rule of freedom, is that you are free to be responsible. And when you're so irresponsible to ignore the fact that your children are being stolen, innocent people incarcerated.
Stay there, Russell. We got a break. Come back and finish up with that on the other side. You know, Russell Means was one of the first people to expose sterilization, and it came out in government documents that tens of thousands of Native Americans, Indians, were sterilized And, of course, you know, last week it came out about Guatemala, and Hillary apologized, you know, shooting kids, men, women up with hardcore live syphilis. Folks, this is all ongoing, and people need to get this through your head. And I'm going to briefly tell a story, but then I want Russell to get into this. But I have a good friend whose dad was one of the heads of a major corporation. I'll just leave it at that, based in Houston. And after his dad died, we went to the funeral, and he told me the story about how they were at the Grand Canyon when he was a little kid with his brother and sister, and there was a drunk Indian stumbling around by the Grand Canyon, and his dad looked at him smugly, and he said, "Son, you see that? That's why we got their land." Well, that's why they're putting poison in your Diet Coke and your kids' food. You're being poisoned so they can get you, so you can be their slave. And it's this attitude of yuppies and some white people, or I see it with black folks, anybody that gets some government power, with corrupt police, that they're on the winning team, and it's a wink, wink, look what we're doing to them. Russell, your comments on that?
Well, it's the classic colonial tool to brainwash. You know, once you're part of the in-group, you know, just witness the black people now. There are blatant acts of racism being perpetuated against them, but because they have a black president, they think they're in, so they're not saying a word. They're not doing a thing, and they're not helping anyone else either. The American people are the same way. It happened with the Italians. It happened with the Irish. It happened with all the immigrants that come to this country. Once they're in, then they ignore their constitutional rights because they're in. It is a weakness in the American fabric. The only way American people can become responsible is to grab their Constitution and declare their freedom from the American government, and let's put them out of a job. The Supreme Court is blatantly corporate controlled. It is on and on and on that the United States government, and we know that the President of the United States government was incorporated in Puerto Rico and is not a constitutional government, and that's why it's all capitalized. Those of us that understand this are the freedom fighters that are left in America. And the American people has this fantasy of a constitutional government, which we do not have. We have to grab our responsibility. I mean, I realized as an American Indian that the United States of America is not going to live up to the Constitution of the United States. I've proven it all the way to the Supreme Court. So rather than continue knocking my head against a brick wall, I didn't want my brain to turn to jelly. So I reestablished the freedom of my people with the Republic of Lakota.
That's right.
So
You've declared...
We withdrew from our treaties with the United States of America, and it's all backed by international and constitutional law.
We're going to go to break and come back and briefly talk about that movement. I'm going to get you back up in the near future. It's been too long to have you on, sir, but I can really feel your soul, your strength, your honor. And I just want to point out to all those that think they're part of the in crowd, the cops, everybody else, look, we're all in this together, whether you're a Native American, Indian, black, white. You better understand that we're all being poisoned, we're all under attack, and that at a spiritual level, we all who love freedom and decency and honor, we need to come together against this tyranny. And I'm going to get Russell Means' take on that statement I just made on the other side. But look, we better come together under freedom, or we're all dead meat. Well, we've only got 5 minutes left with him. I'm going to get him back in the near future to talk about the free Indian nation. And internationally, it's been accepted. And it's important for all of us to stand up and say, I'm not under this New World Order. America's gone. The globalists took it over. Whatever it ever was before, it's gone now. People better realize our country's dead before we can get it back. Well, I'm all for what they've done out in the area that Russell Means is in. Briefly, tell folks about that, and then tell folks about the sterilization of Native Americans, sir.
Well, the Republic of Lakota, of course, is now free, and we have a strategy, both local, regional, and international. Our strategy is to reinforce the constitutional rights and the responsibilities of citizenship. The fact about how America is controlling the population from Indian policy, one of the factors is through sterilization, whether it's through the food or whatever. But this was forced sterilization and sterilization by fraud. 42% of American Indian women in a 4-year period in the 70s were forcibly sterilized. 42% of our women.
And George Herbert Walker Bush ran the program.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, good point. And at the same time, 36% of the women, Puerto Rican women, were sterilized. I exposed this on a morning talk show when we went on the longest walk in 1978 into, and Senator Aberesk, a one-term senator before he resigned. That's an interesting side story. He was at a social event on the Hill in D.C., and CBS News or one of the networks caught him. They asked him, why are you not running again? You only had one term in the Senate. And he said, he thought it was off the cuff, but they televised it. He said, I can't wait to get out of this chicken shit outfit. That was Senator Aberesk. He was an Arab elected to the Senate in the state of South Dakota. And that's why one of the reasons he wanted to get out, because his two popular or unpopular endeavors were supporting the Arab cause and the American Indian cause, two very unpopular issues in Congress. So he got out. Now, on the Republic of Lakota, you know, the best website to go to is russellmeansfreedom.com. russellmeansfreedom.com.
Well, Russell, I want to get you back for a full hour in the next few weeks, because there's no time like the present, to go over, and we'll dig them back out. I've got them. I covered my film Endgame, but it's just one of the many crimes we cover in it. But now, in light of people thinking about this again because of the Guatemala civilist situation, injecting men, women, and children with it, it's a good time to bring this back up to get into the specifics of how they would secretly sterilize Native American women. So we'll get in touch with your scheduler, your wonderful wife, and get you back on live in the near future. But thank you so much for spending time with us, sir.
Thank you for having me. It's great. I love it.
Briefly, in the last 30 seconds, what's your take on when I talked about us all, being brothers and fighting tyranny?
It's the nail on the head. We're Americans. You know, that's what I love about being called an American Indian. You know, I'm the first American, and I love America. We have to get together. Again.
We do. Well, Russell Means, thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again in the very near future. God bless you.
Thank you.